They laughed when I got the house and money, while I got a worthless piece of desert land. But soon they regretted it when I got over $5 million for what was on that land. The thing about small towns in Arizona is that they're like living in a fish bowl where everyone knows what cereal you had for breakfast and laughs if you trip on the sidewalk. In my case, I was their favorite walking punchline. My name's Alex, 19, and until recently, the most exciting thing that ever happened in our town was when the dollar store ran out of Coca-Cola. Our town isn't even on most maps. It's just a collection of sun-bleached buildings that time forgot, halfway between Phoenix and nowhere in particular. The kind of place where the most thrilling entertainment is watching tumbleweeds race across Main Street. People here don't have dreams. They have routines. And everyone knows their place. My dad, Brad, is what you'd call obsessed with real man's work. Digging ditches, fixing trucks, and telling me I need to toughen up at least 3 times before breakfast. His hands are permanently stained with motor oil, and he measures a person's worth by their ability to change a tire in under 5 minutes. I've never been able to do it fast enough for his approval. My stepmom, Candace, is a self-appointed queen of local gossip who wears leopard print leggings and thinks she's the next Oprah. She hosts these wine and wisdom nights where she and her friends get tipsy on cheap Chardonnay and decide whose kids are disappointments. I've overheard my name come up more than once. Then there's my stepbrother Brian, the golden child who won a football medal in high school and now makes TikToks about his success journey while working part-time at the gas station. He drives a truck with tires bigger than my future, and our parents look at him like he's going to be the next Tom Brady or something. I was never part of their little family highlight reel. Too quiet, too bookish, too weird, because I preferred looking at stars rather than watching monster truck rallies. Dad would shake his head and mutter about how I didn't get his good genes. Candace would smile that tight smile that never reached her eyes whenever I walked into a room. When Grandpa George passed away last month, it hit me hard. He was the only one who ever really got me. He'd take me fishing at the lake and tell me stories about his youth, about mistakes he'd made and adventures he'd had. He never made me feel like I needed to be someone else to be worth his time. The day of the will reading at Parker & Sons Law Office downtown, I actually thought things might change. Everyone crowded into this small room with paneling and a portrait of some stern-looking dude who'd probably been dead for a century. The AC was busted, and we all sat there sweating through our Sunday best, waiting for the attorney to tell us what Grandpa had left behind. I wasn't expecting much, maybe his old telescope or his book collection. Something small but meaningful. Brian kept talking about how he was going to turn whatever he got into investment opportunities, whatever that meant. Dad and Candace were already planning vacations with their expected windfall. The lawyer, Mr. Parker, cleared his throat and adjusted his glasses. He looked like someone straight out of a Netflix courtroom drama, complete with suspenders and a bow tie. The room got real quiet as he started reading through the will. Brian got Grandpa's house in town, a neat little bungalow worth at least $280K in today's market. Dad and Candace got a stack of cash and a plot of land near the highway that already had plans approved for a McDonald's franchise. My aunt got his classic Mustang. Even my cousin Tyler, who'd met Grandpa maybe twice, got a nice fishing boat. Then came my name. Everyone turned to look at me, some with pity, others with that smug, what could George possibly leave this loser expression? I straightened up in my chair, trying not to show how much their stares burned. Mr. Parker adjusted his glasses again and said, "To my grandson Alex, I leave my quarry plot in the desert, including all mineral rights, and my trailer located on the property." The silence lasted about 3 seconds before Candace burst out laughing, so hard she snorted coffee through her nose. Brian started making these digging motions with his hands, like I was going to spend my life shoveling dirt. Dad just shook his head, disappointment radiating off him like heat from asphalt in August. "Oh my God, it's your personal Hollywood." Candace wheezed, dabbing at her coffee-stained blouse with a tissue. "You can film westerns with the lizards out there." Brian leaned over, that smirk on his face that always made my stomach knot up. "Maybe you can sell sand on eBay, bro. I hear there's a huge market for nothing." The lawyer handed me a manila envelope with the deed and keys, while everyone else was still snickering. I took it without a word, my face burning, fingers gripping the paper so tight I nearly tore it. I wanted to say something clever, something that would wipe those smiles off their faces, but words stuck in my throat like they always did. Later that night, I sat on my bed staring at the deed to what everyone was calling Alex's big inheritance joke. The quarry was about 40 minutes outside town, abandoned since the 80s, according to the paperwork. The trailer was probably full of scorpions and had a roof that leaked. It was worthless, at least to anyone with sense. I remembered the times Grandpa would take me out to that quarry when I was a kid. We'd bring turkey sandwiches and his old thermos full of sweet tea. He'd show me how different rocks caught the light, taught me to spot the good ones from the junk. He'd put his weathered hand on my shoulder and say things like, "Alex, treasures don't lie on the surface. You got to look for them with your heart." At the time, I thought he was just being nice, giving me those grandpa wisdom nuggets that sound deep but don't really mean anything. Now I wondered if there was something more to it. The next morning, Candace and Dad called me into the kitchen for a family meeting. Brian was there too, leaning against the counter, scrolling through his phone, pretending this wasn't about me. Candace had that fake excited look on her face. The one she uses when she's trying to sell you on a terrible idea, but make it sound like she's doing you a favor. "We got amazing news, Alex. A developer is offering $115,000 for your desert piece. Can you believe it? Just sign these papers and you're set." She slid some documents across the table, her French manicured nails tapping impatiently on the surface. "This is your chance to get out of this town, maybe go to community college or something." Dad grunted from behind his coffee mug. "Don't be an idiot, son. Take the money. You could help the family out and still have something left for yourself." What he meant was, give them half for living expenses and watch the rest disappear into Brian's business ventures that never panned out. I looked at their faces, Dad's stern expectation, Candace's brittle smile, Brian's practiced indifference, and something inside me snapped. They'd already counted me out, written me off as a family charity case who should be grateful for their scraps. For 19 years, I'd swallowed their judgment, their disappointment, their assumptions about who I was and what I was worth. But Grandpa believed in me. Maybe this quarry wasn't just a pile of rocks and dust. Maybe there was something there that only he and I could see. "I need to think about it," I said, pushing back from the table. Dad slammed his fist down, making the coffee mugs jump. "You ungrateful kid. After everything we've done for you." His face turned that dangerous shade of red I'd seen too many times. "If you're too stubborn to take good advice, maybe you're grown enough to make it on your own. Don't expect to keep living under our roof if you're going to throw away this opportunity." Candace folded her arms across her chest, that fake sympathy plastered across her face. "Honey, your father's right. In this economy, with your limited skills, this is the best offer you're going to get. But if you think you know better than us, then you can pack your things and see how the real world treats dreamers." Brian finally looked up from his phone with that smug half-smile. "Mom's basement is occupied, bro. By me, and I'm not sharing." "Don't take too long to decide," Candace called as I walked away. "This offer won't wait forever, and neither will our patience." That night, I packed my backpack with some clothes, my laptop, and Grandpa's old geology book that he left me years ago. I loaded up my pickup truck, a beaten-up Chevy that coughed like an old cowboy with a 2-pack-a-day habit, and watched our house fade in the rear-view mirror. The desert night was coming alive around me as I drove, stars appearing one by one in the sky, bigger than any dream I'd ever dare to have. The radio played some country song about taking chances and making your own luck. And for once, those cheesy lyrics didn't sound so stupid. Grandpa's voice echoed in my head as the truck rattled down the highway. "The real treasure is what you do with what you've got." I gripped the steering wheel tighter, heading toward the inheritance everyone thought was a joke, but that just might be my second chance. Maybe it was time to start digging. I arrived at the quarry just as the sun was climbing over the horizon, painting the desert in shades of orange and gold that almost made this wasteland look magical. Almost. Reality hit as soon as I stepped out of my truck, and the heat slapped me across the face like an angry ex. The desert welcomed me like a bad joke. Empty Bud Light cans tumbled across the cracked earth. Lizards scurried between rocks, eyeing me like I owed them rent money. And tumbleweeds gathered in corners as if planning an ambush. This was it. My grand inheritance, my big future. Grandpa's trailer sat about 50 yards from the quarry edge, a faded metal box that had probably been white sometime during the Reagan administration. The steps creaked under my weight as I climbed up to the door, key in hand, wondering what treasures or nightmares waited inside. The smell hit me first, a potent cocktail of stale tobacco, old leather, and dreams that had died a long time ago. The place was like a time capsule from 1985. Wood-paneled walls covered in maps and faded photographs. A plaid couch with springs that had given up on life. A kitchenette with avocado green appliances that belonged in a museum. The air conditioner wheezed and rattled like Grandpa did in his final days, pushing out air that was barely cooler than the inferno outside. I opened a mini fridge hoping for a cold drink, only to find a six-pack of Diet Coke that had expired 3 months ago, a jar of pickles, and what might have once been cheese. I sat on the metal steps outside the trailer, sipping warm soda and staring at the vast nothingness surrounding me. The quarry itself was just a giant hole in the ground, maybe the size of a football field, with steep walls of layered rock. Nothing special. Nothing valuable, just rocks and dust and silence. My phone buzzed with a text from Brian. How's the desert mansion? Found any diamonds yet? Faced with tears of joy, I turned it off and tossed it onto my sleeping bag. I'd show them all eventually. Somehow. Maybe. That evening, as the sun began to set, I watched shadows stretch across the quarry like long fingers. The silence was deafening. No traffic. No neighbors, no family telling me what a disappointment I was. Just me and my thoughts, which turned out to be even worse company. What was I doing here? Was this some cosmic joke? Or was I just being stubborn? Throwing away a sure thing, $115,000 was nothing to sneeze at, to prove a point nobody cared about? I stared up at the emerging stars and asked them for answers. They just twinkled back, keeping their secrets. The night turned cold in that way deserts do, dropping 30 degrees once the sun abandoned ship. I wrapped myself in Grandpa's old flannel blanket and watched my breath form clouds in the trailer. Sleep came in restless bursts, punctuated by coyote howls and dreams of Brian and Candace laughing at me from across the quarry. Morning brought no fresh insights, just fresh doubts. I walked the perimeter of the quarry, kicking stones and wondering if this was what rock bottom looked like. Literally standing at the bottom of a rock pit with nothing but a trailer and wounded pride to my name. I tried calling the realtor who'd made the offer, just to see if the deal was still on the table. Straight to voicemail. Maybe the universe was telling me something. Or maybe self-service just sucked out here. To keep from losing my mind, I started going through Grandpa's things more thoroughly. The man was a pack rat. Drawers full of National Geographic magazines dating back to the 70s, tackle boxes repurposed to hold nuts and bolts, coffee cans filled with odd-shaped rocks. In the back of the closet, I found an old leather journal tied with twine. The leather was cracked and soft from years of handling. When I opened it, dust motes danced in the sunbeams streaming through the window. Grandpa's cramped handwriting filled the pages, accompanied by sketches of rock formations and maps. On the first page, he'd written in shaky cursive, "Treasure isn't what you hold in your hands. It's what you see when you close your eyes." I rolled my eyes. Seriously, Grandpa? My treasure is sand and cacti? Was this some kind of Zen Buddhist desert wisdom I was too practical to understand? I flipped through more pages. Notes about rock types, locations, weather patterns. Nothing that screamed secret treasure map or strike it rich here. Just the meticulous observations of a man who loved this barren place for reasons I couldn't fathom. Days stretched into a week. I developed a routine of sorts. Wake up at dawn before the heat became unbearable, explore the quarry, retreat to the trailer during midday inferno, then venture out again at dusk. I'd walk the ridges of the quarry, climbing down occasionally to examine the rock walls up close, not really knowing what I was looking for. The isolation started to get to me. I found myself talking to a lizard I named Frank who lived under the trailer steps. What do you think, Frank? Should I just sell this place and admit defeat? Frank would do push-ups on his rock and scurry away, clearly unimpressed with my life choices. By day 8, I was desperate for human contact. That didn't come through a phone screen. My supplies were running low anyway. Turns out you can only eat so many canned beans before your body stages a rebellion. I decided to drive to the next town over, about 40 minutes away, where they were having some kind of local fair or farmer's market. The town of Copper Springs wasn't much bigger than my hometown, but the fairgrounds were busy with weekend visitors. Food trucks lined the edges. Kids ran around with sticky cotton candy faces, and local vendors had set up booths selling everything from homemade jerky to turquoise jewelry. The noise and movement felt overwhelming after days of desert silence. I wandered through the crowds, inhaling the scent of funnel cakes and hot dogs, pretending I was just a normal guy having a normal Saturday, not a desert hermit who'd been talking to lizards all week. Near the back of the fairgrounds, away from the carnival rides and food stalls, there was a row of tents with less flashy displays, local artists, craftspeople, and what looked like rock collectors. I found myself drifting toward them, remembering how Grandpa would drag me to gem shows when I was a kid. That's when I saw her, a girl with messy braid falling over one shoulder, wearing worn jeans and a faded university t-shirt. She was arguing with an older vendor about a rock she was holding, gesturing at it with the passion of someone fighting about politics or religion, not minerals. The cleavage pattern is clearly rhombohedral, and the luster is vitreous to pearly, she insisted, waving a small geological hammer, like it was an extension of her arm. This is not just ordinary calcite. The vendor, a weathered man with a white beard and suspenders, crossed his arms stubbornly. Missy, I've been collecting specimens since before you were born. I know what I'm looking at. She huffed in frustration, placing the rock back on the table with more force than necessary. That's when she noticed me watching. Instead of looking away embarrassed, she rolled her eyes dramatically, as if inviting me to share in her exasperation. Something about her fierce intelligence and complete lack of self-consciousness drew me in. Before I could overthink it, I heard myself saying, "If you're looking for interesting rocks, I've got a whole quarry full of them, plus lizards. The lizards are free." She studied me for a moment, eyes narrowing slightly like she was examining a specimen. They were interesting eyes, bright and sharp, like they could see right through a person to all the fault lines and hidden layers underneath. Then she smiled, not a polite, distant smile, but a genuine one that transformed her face. "A whole quarry, huh? What kind of rocks are we talking about? Sedimentary? Igneous? Metamorphic?" I hesitated, suddenly very aware of my geological ignorance. Dusty ones? With layers? Some are kind of pinkish. Instead of dismissing me, she laughed, a real laugh that made me feel like I said something clever instead of stupid. "Layers is good. Pinkish is interesting. Where's this quarry of yours?" We ended up talking for nearly an hour, sitting on hay bales near a tent selling homemade root beer. Her name was Emily, and she was a geology student at the University of Arizona. She spoke about rocks the way other people talk about their favorite bands or sports teams, with passion and enthusiasm and way more technical terms than I could follow. "So your grandfather left you this quarry, and you're actually living there? Like, in a trailer? By yourself?" She shook her head, not in judgment, but in something like admiration. "That's either completely crazy or kind of awesome. Maybe both." I found myself telling her about the quarry and how I'd inherited it from my grandfather. I kept the messy family details to myself. No need to look like a complete loser with family drama on first meeting. But something about her made it easy to talk, and I did mention that I was trying to figure out if the place had any value before making decisions about it. She listened intently, asking occasional questions about the rock formations, her eyes lighting up with genuine interest. "What made you stay?" she asked finally. "Most people would have taken the money." I thought about it for a moment, trying to articulate something I didn't fully understand myself. My grandpa believed there was something valuable there, and he believed in me. Nobody else ever has. She studied me with those penetrating eyes. "Well, now I'm curious. If you're serious, I'd love to check out your quarry. If there's even one interesting rock formation, it might be worth your while to know what you're sitting on. My heart did a weird little jump at the thought of having company, especially company that actually wanted to see my sad inheritance. You'd really come out there? It's pretty remote and basic, very basic. Emily pulled a notebook from her backpack, scribbled something on a page, and tore it out. Here's my number and email. I've got field research methods class on Monday and Tuesday, but I could come Wednesday if that works for you. I took the paper, trying not to look as desperate as I felt. Wednesday works. I'll text you the coordinates. If there are any decent specimens out there, I'll bring my proper tools. She grinned, patting the geological hammer tucked into her belt loop. And don't worry about it being basic. I grew up camping. No electricity, no running water. Been there, done that, got the tick bites to prove it. We parted ways shortly after, Emily heading back to the university, and me to my truck with supply run of canned food, bottled water, and batteries for the lantern. As I drove back toward the quarry, the setting sun turning the desert gold again. I kept glancing at her note on the passenger seat. For the first time since arriving at this desolate place, I felt something other than doubt and self-pity. Not quite hope. I wasn't ready to go that far, but a flicker of possibility. Someone was coming who might see value in this wasteland. Someone who talked about rocks like they mattered. Someone who looked at me and didn't immediately see a failure. That night, I cleaned up the trailer as best I could, though cleaning mostly meant stuffing Grandpa's clutter into drawers and closets. I reread parts of his journal by lantern light, trying to decipher his cryptic notes with new interest. The desert silence didn't feel quite so empty anymore. Maybe, just maybe, I hadn't made the biggest mistake of my life after all. Wednesday morning, I woke up before my alarm, feeling like a kid on Christmas. I'd spent the previous day cleaning the trailer, hiding Grandpa's more embarrassing decor. The poker-playing dog's painting had to go, and clearing a path through the quarry. I even drove to town for groceries that weren't canned beans, actual fresh food, like someone who had their life together. Around noon, I heard the rumble of an engine climbing the dusty road to my little slice of nowhere. Emily's Jeep appeared, bouncing over ruts like it was born for this terrain. It was covered in desert dust and bumper stickers from national parks across the Southwest. I leaned against my truck, trying to look casual, like I welcome geology students to my quarry every Wednesday. She hopped out of her Jeep with the energy of someone who actually wanted to be here, carrying a backpack that looked heavy enough to crush a smaller person. Her hair was pulled back in the same messy braid, and she wore hiking boots, cargo pants with too many pockets, and a faded University of Arizona t-shirt. No makeup, just freckles and sunburn across her nose. "So, Desert King, where's this treasure of yours?" She winked, and I felt my face get hot. Emily had this way of making me feel like I was in on some joke with her, rather than being the joke myself. It was new territory for me. I led her to the quarry, suddenly seeing it through her eyes, not just a pit in the ground, but a giant cross-section through millions of years of earth. Frank the lizard skirted across our path, and I introduced him formally. She laughed and gave him a little salute. Once we reached the quarry's edge, Emily transformed. The casual college student disappeared, replaced by someone intensely focused and professional. She walked along the rim, eyes scanning the layers of rock, occasionally pulling out a small notebook to jot something down. She climbed down into the quarry with the confidence of a mountain goat, while I followed, trying not to slip and make a complete idiot of myself. The midday sun beat down mercilessly. I offered her water from my backpack, feeling like a proper host. Emily moved between rock formations like a detective at a crime scene, muttering about patterns and textures and mineral deposits. She'd stop occasionally to chip off a small sample with her hammer, or press her magnifying glass against a rock face. I trailed behind her, fascinated by her focus. "Are you talking to the rocks?" I finally asked after she'd been whispering to a particularly striped section of wall. She looked up, a smudge of dust across her cheek, and laughed. "Sort of. They tell better stories than most people. See these layers?" She ran her fingers along bands of color in the rock face. "These are like pages in a book about what this place was like millions of years ago. Ocean floor desert, volcanic activity. It's all written here if you know how to read it. I nodded, pretending I saw more than just pretty colored stripes. The way she touched the stone, like it was something precious, made me wonder what I'd been missing all this time. We'd been exploring for nearly 3 hours when Emily suddenly froze in front of a pinkish slab of rock. It was smooth and glossy, almost like glass, stretching about 20 feet across the quarry wall. I'd walked past it a dozen times and thought nothing of it. Her eyes widened. "Alex," she said, her voice different now, hushed with excitement. "This isn't just a rock. This is pink marble. And not just any pink marble. This looks like it could be Rosa, Aurora, or Portuguese pink." I squinted at it, trying to see what she saw. "Is that good?" She laughed, but not unkindly. "Good? It's rare as an honest politician. This type of marble is used in high-end buildings, luxury hotels, fancy countertops in Malibu mansions. In New York or Los Angeles, this stuff goes for insane money, tens of thousands per batch." My mind was spinning. "You're saying there's actual value here? Like real money value?" Emily nodded, chipping off a small sample and examining it closely. "Your grandfather didn't leave you a quarry. He left you a winning lottery ticket." I stared at the pink wall, unable to process what she was saying. 2 weeks ago, I was a family disappointment with no prospects. Now I was standing in front of what might be a gold mine or marble mine. Technically, was this real, or was I on some hidden camera show? For the next few hours, Emily mapped the extent of the marble deposit, making notes and taking samples. She explained that we needed to have the samples tested to confirm quality and composition. I followed her around in a daze, carrying her tools and trying to absorb the information she was rattling off about market values and extraction methods. As the sun began to set, we sat on the edge of the quarry, legs dangling over the side, sharing lukewarm sodas and the sandwich supplies I bought. The desert was turning gold and purple, temperatures finally dropping to something humans could tolerate. "So what happens now?" I asked, still not quite believing any of this. Emily took another sample from her pocket, turning it to catch the fading light. "I'll take these to the lab at school tomorrow. My professor, Dr. Winters, is an expert in economic geology, rocks that have commercial value. Once we know exactly what we're dealing with, you'll need permits to extract and sell it, equipment, probably investors." She must have seen the panic on my face because she added quickly, "I can help you get started. Dr. Winters knows people in the industry. If this is what I think it is, they'll be fighting to work with you." That night, after Emily left with her samples and promises to call as soon as she had results, I sat outside the trailer staring at the stars. Grandpa's voice echoed in my head. "Treasure isn't what you hold in your hands. It's what you see when you close your eyes." For the first time, I thought I understood. He hadn't just left me rocks and dust. He'd left me possibility, a chance to prove myself, to build something on my own terms. Maybe he'd known about the marble all along, or maybe he just believed there was value here that others couldn't see. The next 4 days were the longest of my life. Emily texted brief updates, lab tests underway, professor very interested, looking promising, but nothing definitive. I paced around the quarry, planning what I'd do if this panned out, trying not to get my hopes up too high. I didn't tell my family. The thought of seeing their faces, if this turned out to be nothing, was too much to bear. Plus, if it was something, I wanted everything in place before they could swoop in and try to claim a piece of it. On Monday morning, my phone rang with Emily's number. I answered with hands, shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. "It's confirmed," she said, her voice bright with excitement. "Highest grade pink marble. Similar to Portuguese Rosa Aurora, but with unique mineral inclusions that make it even more valuable. Dr. Winters says he hasn't seen samples as good in 20 years. I sat down heavily on the trailer steps, legs suddenly unable to support me. "So what does that mean exactly?" "For me, it means you're sitting on millions, Desert King. But, and this is a big, but you need to do this right. You need proper permits, equipment, a business plan. Dr. Winters wants to meet with you. He has connections with ethical quarry operators who might be interested in partnering or investing." My mind was racing. Millions? From this wasteland everyone had laughed at? I thought of Candace's coffee-spitting laughter at the reading, Brian's smirk, Dad's disappointment. The memory fueled something in me. Determination, maybe, or the desire to prove them all spectacularly wrong. What do I do first? I asked, suddenly eager to move, to act, to transform his inheritance from joke to jackpot. Emily laid out the steps. Meet with her professor, file for proper mining permits, create a business entity, find investors for the equipment we'd need. It was overwhelming, but she broke it down into manageable pieces, like solving a big equation step by step. You'll need some startup capital, she warned. Permit applications aren't cheap, and you'll need geological surveys, environmental impact studies, legal fees. My heart sank. I had exactly $342.17 to my name. Not exactly start capital for a mining operation. Then I remembered my old friend Tom from high school, who'd inherited some money from his grandmother and was always talking about wanting to invest in something. He was the only person who'd been genuinely nice to me when my family was at their worst. I called Tom that afternoon and told him what was happening. I was careful not to oversell it, sharing Emily's findings but emphasizing the risks. To my surprise, he was immediately interested. Dude, this sounds way better than the cryptocurrency my cousin keeps trying to get me to buy, he said. How much do you need to get started? By the end of the call, Tom had agreed to loan me $10,000 to cover initial costs in exchange for a small percentage of the business. If it fails, whatever, he said cheerfully. I'll just film a documentary about your epic failure for Netflix and make my money back that way. 2 days later, I sat in Dr. Winter's office at the University of Arizona, wearing the only button-down shirt I owned, trying not to look as out of place as I felt. He was a tall man with wild gray hair and hands covered in scars from a lifetime of hammering at rocks. His office was a museum of geological specimens, every surface covered with rocks of all shapes and colors. He confirmed everything Emily had said and added that the unique coloration and quality of my marble could command premium prices in the luxury market. He introduced me to a lawyer specializing in mining rights, who helped me file the necessary paperwork for extraction permits. Desert pink marble, I said when the lawyer asked what I want to call my company. The name had come to me the night before, as I'd watched the sunset turn the quarry walls to rose gold. It wasn't fancy, but it was honest. Like me, I hoped. I drew the logo myself on a piece of cardboard, a simple outline of the quarry with rays of sun behind it. Not exactly Madison Avenue quality, but it was a start. My start. The permit application was 57 pages of technical jargon, environmental commitments, and legal promises. I spent 3 days filling it out with Emily and Dr. Winter's help, then submitted it with a check from Tom that represented almost everything I had in the world. And then we waited. The mining commission moved on geological time. The lawyer warned me, meaning slowly, very slowly. All I could do was wait and plan, and try not to bite my fingernails down to nothing. I spent the waiting time learning everything I could about marble extraction and the stone industry. Emily brought me books and articles. Dr. Winters connected me with former students who worked in commercial quarrying. Tom set up a basic website for desert pink marble, complete with the crude logo I designed. At night, sitting outside the trailer watching the stars appear one by one, I'd think about Grandpa's words. The real treasure is what you do with what you've got. Was this what he meant? Taking this barren place that everyone else saw as worthless and transforming it into something valuable? 2 weeks after submitting the application, I still hadn't heard anything. The waiting was driving me crazy. Every day I checked my email and phone messages obsessively. Every night, I fell asleep thinking about what would happen if they said no. This was my chance, maybe my only chance, to prove that I wasn't a family failure, that Grandpa had been right to believe in me. I wasn't going to let it slip away. I stared at my phone, willing it to ring with news about the permit. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about showing everyone, maybe even myself, that I could make something from nothing, that the Desert King might actually deserve his crown after all. The permit arrived on a Tuesday morning, exactly 27 days after I'd submitted the application. I nearly tore the envelope trying to get open, hands shaking as I pulled out the official document with its gold seal and formal language. It was real. It was happening. I called Emily first, then Tom, then Dr. Winters. Within hours, we were gathering at the quarry, Emily with a bottle of cheap champagne, Tom filming everything on his phone for the documentary, and Dr. Winters bringing a colleague who represented a major stone distributor interested in seeing our pink marble firsthand. The distributor, a man named Marcus Henley who wore a Rolex that probably cost more than everything I owned, walked the quarry with a careful assessment of someone who'd spent decades evaluating stone. He tapped, measured, examined, and occasionally grunted with approval. I followed behind, trying not to look as terrified as I felt. When he finally spoke, his words changed my life. I can offer you $750,000 for first extraction rights, with profit sharing on future sales. I stood there in my dusty jeans and a faded cap with "Keep on Truckin'" printed across the front. Try to act like people offer me $750,000 every day. Marcus looked at me like I'd just beamed down from Mars, clearly wondering if the scruffy kid in the middle of nowhere could possibly be a legitimate business partner. I signed the initial contract later that week in Marcus's Phoenix office, a glass and steel monument to success that made me acutely aware of my second-hand clothes and desert tan. His assistant kept glancing at me like she was expecting me to pocket the silverware. But when I signed my name on that contract, something shifted. I wasn't just Alex the family disappointment anymore. I was Alex, owner of Desert Pink Marble. The next few months were a blur. My company was officially born in that trailer, with a logo I'd drawn with Sharpie on a piece of cardboard and business cards printed at the local copy shop. My first office was Grandpa's kitchen table, my first filing cabinet a cardboard box from Walmart. But it worked. I used part of the initial payment to hire a small crew and rent equipment. Emily came on as a geological consultant, splitting her time between the quarry and finishing her degree. Tom quit his job at the electronics store to handle the business side. Turns out he'd been taking night classes in marketing all this time. The first extraction was nerve-wracking. What if the marble cracked? What if the quality wasn't consistent throughout? What if this was all some cosmic joke and the pink stone suddenly disappeared? I couldn't sleep the night before, pacing around the trailer until dawn, running through worst-case scenarios. But when that first perfect slab emerged from the quarry wall, gleaming rose pink in the Arizona sun, I knew this wasn't luck. This was Grandpa's gift. Not just a quarry, but the belief that there was value here that others couldn't see. Orders started coming in once word got out about the unique pink marble from Arizona. Designers in Los Angeles wanted it for boutique hotels. Architects in New York inquired about larger orders for luxury condo lobbies. A sheik from Dubai requested samples for a palace renovation. 6 months after finding that first pink slab, I was negotiating a $5 million contract with an international stone distributor. Me, the kid who couldn't even get a promotion at the hardware store, whose own father thought wasn't worth investing in. I bought a small house in the hills overlooking the desert. Nothing fancy, just a modern place with big windows and a deck where I could drink coffee and watch the sunrise. I kept the trailer, too, as a reminder where I'd started. Sometimes I'd still sleep there, especially after long days at the quarry. Grandpa used to say, "Real success doesn't shout, it whispers." So I kept quiet about exactly how well things were going. I paid back Tom's loan with generous interest, donated to Dr. Winter's geology department, and set up a scholarship fund for first-generation college students studying earth sciences. I bought myself a new truck, practical, not flashy, and put the rest into growing the business. My transformation wasn't just financial. I started standing straighter, speaking more confidently, looking people in the eye instead of at my shoes. Emily said it was like watching someone step into the person they were always meant to be. Our relationship had evolved too. Somewhere between late nights poring over geological surveys and early mornings watching the quarry come to life, we become more than business partners. She was brilliant, funny, and saw value in me long before anyone else did. When she finished her master's degree and accepted a full-time position with Desert Pink Marble, I felt like I'd won the lottery twice. By the 1-year mark, I had 15 employees, contract with major distributors across 3 continents, and industry recognition for the unique quality of our marble. I was fielding calls from investors wanting a piece of the company, developers seeking exclusive rights, even a reality TV producer interested in the amazing story of the Desert King. I turned most of them down. This wasn't about fame or getting rich quick. It was about building something real, something that would last, something Grandpa would be proud of. But you can't keep success quiet in a small town, especially not when locals are used to ignore you are suddenly seeing your company trucks roll through town, or hearing about your marble and fancy buildings featured in magazines. The whisper started at the diner, the gas station, the church socials. The kid who'd been written off had somehow struck it rich in that worthless desert quarry. The rumors grew with each telling. I was a secret millionaire. I'd found gold. I'd made a deal with the devil. I was restocking supplies at the hardware store, the same one that had passed me over for promotion 3 times, when I ran into Brian. He was still working at the gas station, still making TikToks about his entrepreneurial mindset, while actually doing nothing. He acted like we were old buddies, slapping me on the back and talking loudly about always believing in me. Asked if I was hiring, mentioned how great we'd be as business partners. I just nodded politely and moved on, but the encounter left me uneasy. If Brian had heard about my success, so had Dad and Candace. I didn't have to wait long to find out. The next morning, a familiar SUV pulled up to the quarry office. A double-wide trailer that had replaced Grandpa's old one. Dad's prized Suburban, waxed to a mirror's shine as always, looking out of place among the work trucks and equipment. They walked in like actors in a bad comedy. Dad in his Sunday best despite it being Tuesday, Candace in a leopard print dress, and enough perfume to choke a cactus, Brian trailing behind with that smirk I'd grown up hating. Candace's face was a mask of sugary sweetness as she took in the office. The awards on the walls, the scale models of our marble installations, the framed magazine features. Alex, honey, we've been trying to reach you for weeks. Your number must have changed. It hadn't. I just stopped answering their calls after the 3rd message asking for a little financial help for family. Dad cleared his throat, looking around at what I'd built with a strange mix of pride and resentment. You've done good, son. Real good. Always knew you had it in you. The lie was so blatant I almost laughed. Instead, I offered them coffee, playing the polite host while wondering what exactly they wanted. I didn't have to wonder long. We're family, Alex, Dad said, leaning forward in his chair. Family sticks together through thick and thin. Now it's time to share the blessings. Candace nodded enthusiastically. We've been thinking of ways we could help with your business. I could handle par. I've got lots of connections in the community. And your father knows all about construction equipment. Dad had driven a bulldozer once, 20 years ago, on a job that had lasted 3 weeks. And I could run your social media, Brian chimed in. I've got like 500 followers now. That's basically being an influencer. I sipped my coffee, letting the silence stretch uncomfortably. These were the same people who'd laughed at my inheritance, who'd kicked me out when I wouldn't sell the quarry for quick cash. The same people who'd never believed in me until I proved them wrong. Before I could respond, Brian pulled some yellowed papers from his jacket pocket. Actually, we've been doing some research. Found these in Dad's old files. Looks like Grandpa promised Dad a stake in any minerals found on the family land way back in the 90s. This quarry? Technically part ours. My stomach dropped as I glanced at the documents. Ancient-looking paperwork with signatures I couldn't quite make out. Were they real? Could they really take away everything I'd built? Dad's expression hardened, the fake warmth evaporating. We can do this the easy way, as family, or we can get lawyers involved. Your choice, son. I felt everything I'd worked for starting to crack. They were looking at me like coyotes eyeing a wounded chicken, calculating the easiest way to tear me apart and divide the spoils. In that moment, with my so-called family trying to strong-arm their way into my hard-won success, I remembered something I'd nearly forgotten. The small wooden box Grandpa had left for me, with specific instructions not to open it until a year after his death. I'd found it when cleaning out the old trailer, tucked under his bed in a metal lockbox. The key had been his journal, wrapped in a note saying, "For Alex, open 1 year from now, not before." With everything happening so fast, discovering the marble, starting the business, building something from nothing, I'd set the box aside in my new house and somehow never gotten around to opening it. The 1 year mark had passed months ago. Dad was still talking, laying out their demands, percentage ownership, monthly payments, positions in the company for all three of them. Candace was nodding along, already mentally spending my money. Brian was eyeing my desk chair like he belonged in it. "I need to check some things," I said finally, cutting Dad off mid-sentence. "Legal documents, Grandpa's papers. Let me look into it and get back to you." They didn't want to leave without a commitment, but I stood firm. After extracting promises to consider their family interests, they finally headed back to town, already squabbling among themselves about who would get what title in their company. As their SUV disappeared down the dusty road, I called Emily. "I need to go to the house. There's a box from Grandpa I should have opened months ago." "The family vultures showed up, didn't they?" she asked. She'd never met them, but she'd heard enough stories to know exactly who they were. With paperwork claiming partial ownership, I confirmed. "I don't know if it's legitimate, but—" "Go check that box," she said firmly. "I'll call our lawyer just in case." I drove to my house in a daze, mind racing. Could Dad and Candace really take this away from me? After all the work, all the risk, all the nights I'd lain awake wondering if I was crazy to even try? Would Grandpa have set me up for failure like that? The wooden box sat on my closet shelf, gathering dust. I'd been too busy building something to stop and open it, too focused on the future to look back at this final message from the past. I set it on my kitchen table, this last gift from the only person who'd ever really believed in me. It wasn't large, about the size of a thick hardcover book, but it suddenly seemed to contain the weight of my entire future. The brass key turned smoothly in the lock. Inside might be answers or more questions. It might save everything I had built or confirm that I was about to lose it all. My hand hovered over the lid as the evening desert sun streamed through the windows, turning everything to gold. Whatever was inside, I knew one thing for certain. Grandpa had wanted me to find it, had believed I would need it, eventually. I thought of his words from the journal. "Treasure isn't what you hold in your hands. It's what you see when you close your eyes." I closed my eyes for a moment, seeing not the quarry or the marble or the business, but Grandpa's weathered face, his quiet confidence in me when no one else had any. Maybe that was the real inheritance. Not the land or the minerals, but the belief that I could make something of myself, that I was worth investing in. Whatever this box contained, that gift could never be taken away. I took a deep breath and reached for the lid. The wooden box creaked as I opened it, the sound echoing in my kitchen as the last rays of sunset painted the walls amber. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded red velvet, were several neatly folded documents and a sealed envelope with my name written in Grandpa's shaky handwriting. My heart pounded as I carefully lifted the envelope. It wasn't heavy, but it felt like it carried the weight of my entire future. I broke the seal and pulled out a single sheet of paper, the familiar scent of Grandpa's tobacco clinging faintly to it even after all this time. "Dear Alex," it began, "if you're reading this, it means two things. I'm gone, and you found something worth fighting for in that old quarry of mine." His handwriting trembled across the page, but his words were as solid as the marble we'd discovered. "I always knew you were different from the rest of them. You see value where others see nothing. You ask questions when others just assume. That's why this land is yours. Always has been." I read on, my fingers tracing his words as if I could somehow feel his presence through them. "I legally transferred the quarry and all mineral rights solely to you 5 years ago. The documents in this box prove it. No one can take it from you. Not your father, not Candace, not anyone." The letter continued, explaining how he discovered traces of the pink marble years earlier, but kept it quiet. He'd had samples tested, knew its value, but decided to wait. "Some treasures reveal themselves only to those patient enough to look deeper," he wrote. I knew you'd find it when you were ready. The final paragraph hit me hardest. If you're reading this, Alex, you've proved me right. The land is yours. It always was. But remember, the real treasure isn't what comes out of that quarry. It's what you've discovered about yourself along the way. I set the letter down, hands trembling slightly, and examined the other documents in the box. Property deed, mineral rights certificates, geological surveys, all dated years before Grandpa's death, all with my name listed as sole owner. He'd planned this all along, creating an inheritance that couldn't be contested. There was also a faded photograph I'd never seen before, a much younger Grandpa standing at the edge of the quarry, pointing at something in the rock wall with the excitement of someone who just struck gold. On the back, he'd written, "The moment I knew, 1987. I spent the night poring over every document, then called our company lawyer first thing in the morning. He arrived at my house 2 hours later, examining the papers with increasing amazement. "These are ironclad," he said finally, looking up at me over his reading glasses. "Your grandfather transferred everything to you years before his death, with all the proper legal protocols. The quarry and everything in it has been legally yours all along." He chuckled, shaking his head. "Your grandpa was one sly old coyote. He must have known someone would try to challenge you once the marble was discovered." Relief washed over me, not just because my business was secure, but because Grandpa had believed in me enough to protect my future long before I believed in myself. "What about the papers my dad showed me?" I asked. "Some agreement about family mineral rights from the 90s? The lawyer's smile was downright predatory. "Bring them in. I'd love to see them try to override these documents." I arranged a meeting at his office the following day, inviting Dad, Candace, and Brian to discuss their claim to my quarry. I didn't tell them what I'd found. Some lessons are best learned in person. The family arrived at the lawyer's downtown office the next morning, dressed like they were attending a reading of another will, one they expect to benefit from this time. Dad wore his church suit. Candace had on a new dress that still had a security tag attached. Apparently she was planning to return after the meeting. Brian was looking at the office like he was mentally measuring for new furniture. My lawyer laid out Grandpa's documents one by one, explaining in careful, precise language that the quarry and all its minerals had been legally mined for years before Grandpa's death. The deed, the transfer of mineral rights, the certified surveys, all with my name alone. "So you see," he concluded, "any prior arrangements would have been superseded by these legal transfers. The quarry belongs solely to Alex and has since 2019. I watched their faces change as understanding dawned. Dad turned a shade of red I'd never seen before, somewhere between a fire truck and a blood vessel about to burst. Candace's mouth opened and closed like a fish suddenly finding itself on dry land. Brian just slumped in his chair, his dreams of easy wealth evaporating. "Let me see those," Dad demanded, reaching for the documents. My lawyer slid them away smoothly. "These are simply copies for your review. The originals have already been filed with the county recorder's office." "This can't be legal," Candace hissed. "George wouldn't have done this. He must have been confused, not in his right mind." My lawyer smiled thinly. "The transfers were witnessed by 2 separate attorneys and a notary public. Your father-in-law was documented as being a completely sound mind." Dad slammed his yellowed papers on the table, the ones that had made my stomach drop just days earlier. "What about these? George promised me a share of any minerals found on the family land. Signed right here in 1992. My lawyer examined them briefly, then set them aside with the careful distaste of someone handling week-old garbage. These appeared to be preliminary discussions, not executed agreements. And even if they were valid at some point, they would have been nullified by the subsequent legal transfer of the property to Alex. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a tone that managed to be simultaneously professional and threatening. "Should you choose to pursue this claim, we are prepared to vigorously defend Mr. Turner's legal ownership, given the clear documentation. I would strongly advise against wasting your resources on what would almost certainly be a losing battle." The 3 of them sat there like they collectively swallowed a cactus, prickly and uncomfortable. Brian muttered something about an appeal, but even he didn't sound convinced. I hadn't said a word during the entire exchange, just watched as their plans to capitalize on my success crumbled before their eyes. Now I stood, gathering my copies of Grandpa's documents. "Thank you for coming," I said, surprised by the calmness in my voice. "And thank you for kicking me out that day when I wouldn't sell the quarry. You did me a favor. You gave me the push I needed to become someone I never thought I could be." Dad started to say something angry, but I cut him off. "I don't hate you, any of you, but I don't owe you anything either." As they filed out of the office, shoulders slumped into feet, I felt a weight lift that I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying, the weight of seeking approval from people who would never truly give it. The days that followed passed in a blur of emotions, relief that my company was secure, wonder at Grandpa's foresight, and a growing sense of peace that I hadn't felt since maybe ever. I threw myself into expanding Desert Pink Marble, securing new contracts, hiring more local workers, establishing a foundation to support education in geology and sustainable mining practices. The story of the desert kid who struck marble made its way through industry circles, bringing more attention and opportunities. Emily and I grew closer, our partnership extending beyond a business. She understood me in ways no one else ever had, not just accepting my quirks and insecurities, but appreciating them as part of who I was. On weekends, we'd explore other parts of the desert, looking for geological wonders that others might overlook, just as Grandpa had taught me. 6 months after meeting with my family, I received a text from Brian. Unlike the passive-aggressive messages Dad and Candace had sent, this one seemed almost genuine. "Congrats on the success!" No hard feelings. I didn't respond immediately. Trust, like the desert's minerals, doesn't form overnight, but eventually I invited him to tour the quarry operation. He came alone, without the swagger or entitlement, and seemed genuinely impressed by what we'd built. "I get it now," he said as we stood looking over the operation. "Why Grandpa gave this to you instead of me or Dad. You did something with it. You saw what we couldn't." It wasn't an apology exactly, but it was something close to respect. That was enough for now. Dad and Candace took longer to come around. Pride is a stubborn thing, especially when mixed with the realization that you've underestimated someone your whole life. But eventually, even they extended an olive branch, an invitation to Thanksgiving dinner. I went, bringing Emily and a bottle of good whiskey. The conversation was stilted at times, but civil, progress of a sort. One crisp evening about a year after finding Grandpa's box, Emily and I stood at the edge of the quarry, watching the sunset paint the pink marble walls with gold and amber light. The operation below us hummed with activity. Workers finishing their day, machines being shut down, the steady rhythm of a successful business. "We should expand to Europe next," Emily said, pointing to a map on her tablet. "There's huge demand for unique marble like ours in Italy. Ironic, considering they're famous for their own stone." I nodded, only half listening, my mind on the journey that had brought me here. From family punchline to successful businessman, from inheritance joke to industry pioneer, from someone who didn't believe in himself to someone who didn't need others' belief to thrive. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you'd taken that $115,000 offer? Emily asked, tucking her tablet away as the stars began to appear one by one in the darkening sky. I smiled, remembering the desperate kid who'd almost given up before he'd even started. Sometimes, I'd probably be working some job I hated, watching the money dwindle, still try to prove myself to people who weren't worth impressing. We fell silent, listening to the desert come alive around us, the whisper of wind through scrub brush, the distant call of a coyote, the subtle settling of earth cooling after a day under the Arizona sun. I thought about Grandpa's final words in his letter, the ones that had stuck with me through every challenge and triumph since. The real treasure isn't what comes out of that quarry. It's what you've discovered about yourself along the way. He'd been right, of course. The pink marble had changed my life, brought wealth and opportunity I'd never imagined. But the true value had been in discovering my own resilience, my ability to build something from nothing, my worth beyond others' limited perceptions. The desert darkness deepened around us, stars multiplying across the vast sky. Below, the last workers' trucks kicked up dust as they headed out, leaving the quarry peaceful. I could almost feel Grandpa standing beside us, nodding in approval. His words echoed in my mind, clearer than ever. The real treasure isn't the marble, Alex. It's you. Emily's hand found mine in the growing darkness, warm and solid and real. The business would continue to grow. There would be new challenges, new opportunities, new horizons to explore. But in that moment, watching day turn the night over the quarry that had changed everything, I knew I had found my path, and it had been mine all along.